Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. It began with whispers, subtle signs that seemed too small to mean anything but too persistent to ignore. Caroline had always been meticulous about her schedule, a creature of habit, but lately, her patterns had shifted. The usual cheerful phone calls during lunch breaks became brief texts, and her evenings, once spent curled up on the couch with me, were now claimed by unexplained late nights. One Tuesday evening, as the clock ticked past midnight, the sound of the front door creaking open broke the silence. I looked up from my laptop as Caroline walked in, her heels clicking softly against the wooden floor. She paused in the doorway, the faint scent of whiskey and a floral perfume that wasn't hers lingering in the air. "Long night?" I asked, my tone neutral as I tried to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, the team stayed late to finish a big presentation. I'm exhausted." I nodded, though the way her eyes darted to her phone as it buzzed betrayed her calm facade. "You missed dinner. I kept it warm for you." "Oh, thanks, Brian," she said, rushing past me and heading straight to the kitchen. "But I'm not really hungry." Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and quickly pressed it to her chest before turning away. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay composed. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff," she replied quickly, her voice a little too bright. The way she avoided my gaze spoke volumes. The next morning, as she showered, her phone sat on the nightstand, unguarded. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the device. Then, almost involuntarily, I picked it up. A single message glowed on the screen. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." It was signed with an initial, L. The phone slipped from my hand back onto the table, my breath catching in my throat. I clenched my fists and walked to the window, staring blankly at the rising sun. For the first time in our 7 years of marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. The unease in my chest refused to subside. The message on her phone had opened a door I couldn't close, and every interaction with Caroline felt like a puzzle piece waiting to be placed. I needed answers, and though guilt clawed at me, curiosity burned stronger. One afternoon, while Caroline was out on another of her work meetings, I opened her laptop. It felt wrong, but the weight of suspicion made my hands steady. Her email was open, and among the usual threads of work correspondence was one that stood out. Subject line: dinner plans. Sender: Logan. My stomach tightened. I clicked. The contents were casual, almost mundane on the surface. A meeting time. A mention of a new restaurant downtown, but the tone was too familiar, too playful. "Let's not make it too late this time," he'd written, followed by a winking emoji. My jaw clenched. That evening, I tried to broach the topic carefully. "Caroline, you've been really busy lately," I said as we sat at dinner. She looked up, fork pausing midair. "It's just work, Brian. You know how it is." "You never used to work so late," I pressed, keeping my tone light. "Everything okay?" Her eyes darted away for the briefest second before she forced a smile. "Deadlines, demanding clients. It's nothing to worry about." But I was worried. That night, I ordered a discreet security camera online, my decision final. By the time it arrived 2 days later, I had resigned myself to the fact that the truth, no matter how ugly, had to come out. I installed it in the living room while Caroline was out, positioning it carefully to capture the entire space. 2 nights later, she came home past midnight again. As I pretended to sleep, I heard her laughing softly on the phone. My heart pounded in my ears as the sound of her steps faded toward the bathroom. The camera had been recording, and I knew it held answers I could no longer ignore. The camera footage felt like a slap to the face. There they were, Caroline and Logan, laughing on our couch, her hand on his arm, his fingers brushing her hair. My breath hitched as I watched the timestamps flash. The betrayal was no longer abstract. It was tangible, undeniable. The next morning, Caroline left for her usual yoga class, and I took the opportunity to prepare. I transferred the footage to my laptop, splicing together the most damning moments. My hands trembled, but I pushed through, ensuring the evidence was impossible to refute. By the time Caroline returned, I was seated in the living room, laptop connected to the TV. She walked in and humming, her heels clicking against the floor. "Hey, Brian," she called, setting her bag down. What's with the serious face? We need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Her smile faltered. Talk about what? I gestured toward the TV. About this. I hit play. The screen came alive with the footage of her and Logan. Her laughter echoed through the room, but this time it wasn't charming, it was damning. Caroline froze, her eyes widening as the images played out. Brian, I can explain. Explain what? I interrupted, my tone sharp. How you brought him into our home, how you laughed with him on our couch. She reached for the remote, panic flooding her features, but I grabbed it first. No, Caroline, you're going to watch this. Watch what you've done. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned away from the screen. It's not what it looks like. Then tell me, I demanded, stepping closer. What is it? She said nothing, her silence louder than any excuse she could have offered. I stood there, my heart pounding, knowing that the setup was complete. The next move was mine. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, but the warmth did nothing to ease the chill in the air. Caroline came home early, a radiant smile on her face as she stepped through the door. Morning, love, she chirped, setting her bag down with a carefree grace that made my stomach churn. She kissed my cheek, her lips lingering for a moment too long, as if testing my resolve. Morning, I replied, my voice calm but distant. I gestured toward the couch. Sit down. She paused, her brows knitting slightly. What's going on? She asked, her tone laced with cautious curiosity. Just sit, I repeated, my gaze unyielding. Slowly, she complied, her posture rigid as she perched on the edge of the sofa. I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The screen flickered, and then there it was, the footage of her and Logan. Her laughter, her touch, the betrayal, all playing out in vivid detail. Caroline's eyes widened, her breath hitching as she stared at the screen. Brian, she whispered, her voice trembling. I can explain. I folded my arms, leaning against the wall. Go ahead. Explain. Her words faltered, tears brimming in her eyes. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. A mistake? Bringing him into our home. Laughing with him on our couch. Was that a mistake too? She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Please, Brian, you have to believe me. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough for you to destroy everything we built. I said, my voice cold. I reached for the folder on the table and placed it in front of her. Here, this is where we're at now. Her trembling hands opened the folder, revealing the divorce papers. Her sobs grew louder as she read through them, her world crumbling with each word. Brian, please, she begged, looking up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. I'll do anything. Just don't do this. I stood there, unmoved. You already did it, Caroline. This is just the consequence. I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the reality she had created. The echo of her sobs followed me as I closed the door behind me. The house felt hauntingly empty as I walked through it one last time. Each room carried memories, some joyful, others now tainted by betrayal. I paused in the living room, the place where everything had come to light, and exhaled deeply. The echoes of our life together faded into silence, replaced by a sense of finality. Caroline was nowhere to be seen. She had taken the morning to pack her essentials, leaving behind the remnants of a shared life. On the dining table, a note lay folded, her handwriting scrawled across the page. Brian, it began. I know I can't undo the pain I caused, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I am sorry. Truly. I read it without emotion, setting it down as quickly as I had picked it up. Her remorse, though palpable, came too late. Actions spoke louder than words, and hers had been deafening. Ready to go? A familiar voice called from the doorway. It was Ethan, my oldest friend, who had been a steady presence through the chaos. I nodded, grabbing my suitcase. Yeah, it's time. As we loaded the car, Ethan glanced back at the house. You sure about this? I hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing on me for a fleeting moment, but then I nodded firmly. There's nothing left for me here. The drive to my new apartment was quiet, but not uncomfortable. It then broke the silence as we reached the city limits. You know, this isn't the end. It's just a new beginning. I smiled faintly, appreciating his optimism. It doesn't feel like it now, but maybe you're right. Later that evening, as I sat in my new, smaller living room, the quiet felt different. It wasn't heavy or oppressive, it was peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I picked up my phone, deleting Caroline's number and blocking it. It was symbolic, a way of saying goodbye not just to her, but to the version of myself that had clung to something broken. Caroline later moved in with Logan, but their relationship failed. Rumors trickled back through mutual acquaintances. Their spark quickly fizzled, replaced by arguments and mistrust. It seemed the foundation they built on lies could not withstand reality. As I leaned back, the faint sounds of the city outside, I whispered to no one in particular, "Here's to starting over." And with that, I closed the chapter on us, ready to write a new story, one that belonged solely to me. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.